Hello, we are at Agile Adria 2014. My name is Marko Keba, and I have a privilege to be talking to Hakan Forss. So please, Hakan, can you please just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hakan Forss. I'm a Lean and Agile coach from Avega Group in Stockholm. I typically work as a coach working with companies but mostly with their leaders, how we can get lean and agile thinking into organizations.
Okay, so what you did at the conference, you gave a big 3-hour workshop on Toyota Kata, and today there was an open space which prompted a lot of discussion on the Toyota Kata itself. So people were actually liked the workshop. So we're going to talk about Toyota Kata, of course, and maybe before we just dig into the model itself. Why would you say that we need a structured way of handling improvements in the first place? Why would we need that?
So it is easy that we get, as individuals, that we get stuck in our daily work and we just focus on doing the things that we generally do. If you're a programmer, you want to program. If you're a tester, you want to test, and so on. And if we don't put a structured way into doing this, it's easily that we just focus on kind of the customer value adding work. But if we want to improve over time, we also need to take some time to reflect and kind of sharpen our saw instead of just keep sawing at the tree. And having a structured way of doing this, like a retrospective or like a Toyota Kata structure where we typically do it once or multiple times a day, it will help us then to focus part of our day into looking at how we can sharpen the saw.
So to get the best of the time that we invest in the improvement by having a structured approach.
And also that we actually take the time. If you ask most people, couldn't we do some improvement work? They say typically that they are too busy to actually think about how to improve. And therefore we will not even try to do improvement if we don't put some structure into place.
Okay, so what is the basic structure of Toyota Kata? How does that work?
So it's basically two things. It's one thing called the improvement kata that is focusing on how to do improvements or really experiments so we can learn how our process works and then potentially improve it. And then we have the management structure or the coaching structure that is called the coaching kata that would help the organization, the people doing the improvements will be helped and giving a structure of how to actually do the improvements. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that you think that you have some general direction, you have a true north or a vision, and then you need to discover how are things really working right now. And then you take small steps towards that vision, and you can set up maybe a challenge that is 1, 2, 3 or 5 years out. But to get some motivation, you will set smaller steps on the way towards that challenge that we call target conditions. And those are not targets, but they are conditions of how the process would work when we are operating in the way that we want, moving us closer to the challenge.
Okay, so some like milestones that we know, okay, we are where we want it to be.
Yeah, so you could say it's like a time box. You set a point in time when you should evaluate, and you say, at this point in time we want the process to operate like this. It's an hypothesis of how we want the process to operate. Mm-hmm. And then we try to, in small experiments, get to that point and see if that achieved what we wanted it to achieve. And then when we reach that point, we set a new target condition that is hopefully then closer to our challenge or our vision of how the perfect process would look like.
Mm-hmm. And what are the time boxes? How much time are we talking about?
Typically a target condition would be something that you set is 1 to 3 months out, no longer than that. Mm-hmm. And either you get to a point where the process operates at a target condition and then it will expire, or you get to the date and then it expires and then you have to set a new target condition. And then you have, to get there, you do small experiments or running through the PDCA cycle. And that is typically something that you will do on a daily basis.
So we run PDCA on a daily basis.
Yes.
Maybe for the people that are not familiar with the PDCA, can you just explain a bit?
So the definition says plan for P, D for do, C for check, and A for act. And it's basically this scientific model where you have an hypothesis and you make a plan. That would be the planning part. Then you will run the experiment. That would be the do part. And then the check would then be the observation of the results. And then you compare to your hypothesis and the prediction you made during the plan. And based on that learning, you will then do the acting part. That would be then change what would be the next hypothesis or experiment that you want to run. And this you do more or less on a daily basis.
So it actually could be done on a daily basis.
Absolutely. The biggest problem generally is that we are making too big experiments, and therefore they will drag out in time, and then it will lower the motivation from people to actually do them. But if we can get down to daily, and I have actually been able to do it on 2 to 3 times a day, then you will really see some energy in the people that they will actually do something, and they will do it immediately, and you will see results more or less.
Can we maybe use a real life example of some sort of experiment that could be run daily, or as you said, 2 or 3 times a day, that will make depict the picture more clearly?
So one team or multiple teams that we work with, they had a continuous improvement engine that they had for testing software, and to set up the environment was quite complex. So the environment itself was not giving a positive or negative result always based on the software that was actually checked in. In many cases it was due to the setting up of the environment that was generating kind of if it was red or green. Mm-hmm. And then we said the challenge is that we want to have all the runs should give positive or negative feedback for how the software quality is.
Is that the target condition?
In this case, that was actually the challenge. Mm-hmm. And because the idea here was that maybe is 1 year out that we could be able to achieve that.
Okay.
Due to the complexity of the problem. So the target condition was to, in this case then, to move from 9 faults that was based on the environment, mm-hmm. to 7 faults a day. Okay. That was due to the environment.
That's clear.
And then we kind of ran a small experiment. So is it the cron jobs problem that is generating this, or is it the build script, how we build up the environment, or are we doing things in the wrong order?
Those were the hypotheses that the team made. Okay.
Exactly. So we were trying small experiment of this, maybe make a small change in the order, or put in a small amount of pause in the script to the environment to really see if it works or not. And small things like that. So very small, distinct experiments that we were running to see if we can get the environment to the level that it was actually performing according to how we wanted it to perform.
Okay. And then the structure behind the actual experiments is people meet and we follow up this. Do we somehow put it down on a piece of paper, or how do we keep track of these ideas?
The Kata idea, that's why it has its name, is that you are following a strict script of how you go through this. So you kind of build a muscle memory of how you do it, and so you can focus all your efforts of the actual content. And what you do is that you say, what do we want to achieve? And then what is the current condition? What was the last experiment we were running? And what did we expect? What actually happened? And the delta between the prediction and then what actually happened would be the learning. and that learning should then feed back into the next experiment that we will run, and then we kind of eat away from where we are right now to the wanted position. We eat away of everything that is standing in the way to move to that position.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's a very structured approach.
Okay. And is there some sort of moderation, or one person that is supposed to be taking care that everything is under control, under the how Kata prescribes it?
Yeah. So it's two parts. You have the team or a single person that would do the actual improvement. Mm-hmm. And then you have the manager or the coach that would do the actual coaching and facilitation of the process.
Okay.
And when you take this, and if you build this into the organization where the managers will always be part of doing this work, it will also be part of the daily work of the managers in the whole organization, which means that there will be run experiments on all levels in the organization all the time. And the managers, one of the main points of the manager's job would then be to facilitate the process of the improvement, and then focusing on the process itself, not the content, because the content should be done by the learner or the team.
Okay. One of the problems, I might call it, for some teams and some organizations is the actual motivation to improve. Yes. So if somebody says, we're good as we are today, why do we want to improve? How do we motivate the people to want to improve in the first place? And then we can use Toyota Kata to improve.
So typically, if you really step back and you look at most people, they have intrinsic motivation to always improve. But how we have set up the system, or how we have designed how the workplace work, what the manager would respond to suggestions and so on, typically will kind of put the lid on so people don't feel that the ideas that they have will be listened to, and therefore eventually they will say, well, I don't care anymore, there's no one listening to my suggestions, and therefore I will not even give any suggestions anymore, I will just keep working as it is. But with this structured way of doing it, you set an aim for where we're going to go, and people will find their own experiments to run to see if they can move in that direction. Then you will typically see that most people are really interested in doing improvements.
So you mean the structure itself is going to be a motivator for people to invest their time and their ideas?
If the managers, the coaches really listen to people and allow them to try things, then that is typically what would happen, yes.
Okay.
But it connects to the bigger system. If you get recognition for running your improvements, if you get a pat on your back, even if you run an experiment that didn't give the expected results because you have focused on the learning side and not the outcome, then you will typically see people want to do this.
Okay. And you have seen that from your live experience?
Yes.
Your experience.
The biggest problem I've had with implementing Toyota Kata would be that the managers themselves are not interested and involved in the process. They want to kind of take a step back and are not want to be involved in the coaching side. And the other part is that we run them not often enough. So some teams that I've been working with, we had a meeting once a week. Then nothing happened for more or less the whole week except for the hours before the meeting. And then they felt stressed and kind of pressured to do it. And therefore it really didn't really catch on. But with the teams where you could go down to a daily or multiple times a day, and they recognized that people were listening to their suggestions and they haven't even tried them out, then we got a totally different type of engagement in the work.
Okay, so the more often, the less focus is lost.
Yes, it's the same with when most processes, smaller batches is often better.
Yeah, true. Okay, thank you very much, Hakan.
Thank you. We typically do it once or multiple times a day, it will help us then to focus part of our day into looking at how we can sharpen the saw.
So to get the best of the time that we invest in the improvement by having a structured approach.
And also that we actually take the time. If you ask most people, couldn't we do some improvement work? They say typically that they are too busy to actually think about how to improve. And there's an agile thinking into organizations.
Okay, so what you did at the conference, you gave a big 3-hour workshop on Toyota Kata, and today there was an open space which prompted a lot of discussion on the Toyota Kata itself. So people were actually liked the workshop. So we're going to talk about Toyota Kata, of course. And maybe before we just dig into the model,
it's easily that we just focus on kind of the customer value adding work. But if we want to improve over time, we also need to take some time to reflect and kind of sharpen our saw instead of just keep sawing at the tree. And having a structured way of doing this, like a retrospective or like a Toyota Kata structure where we...
Hello, we are at Agile Adria 2014. My name is Marko Keba and I have a privilege to be talking to Hakan Forss. So please, Hakan, can you please just introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hakan Forss. I'm a Lean and Agile coach from Avega Group in Stockholm. I typically work as a coach working with companies but mostly with their leaders, how we can get lean.
Why would you say that we need a structured way of handling improvements in the first place? Why would we need that?
So it is easy that we get, as individuals, that we get stuck in our daily work and we just focus on doing the things that we generally do. If you're a programmer, you want to program. If you're a tester, you want to test, and so on. And if we don't put a structured way into doing this,